Finally, Si Hyuk breaks his silence. The real reason Jimin left Jungkook at the airport Gimpo, July 13th, 2025, a quiet airport. A dragging suitcase.
No smiles, no waves, no goodbye.
But why did Jimin walk away from Jungkook that day without a word, without a glance? And why was Si Hyuk watching it all unfold in silence? It was a scene that sent tremors through the global fandom and stunned even the most seasoned insiders of the K-pop industry. Park Jimin, one of the most emotionally expressive members of BTS, walking alone through Gimpo International Airport, eyes hidden under the shadow of a hood, mouth pressed into silence, suitcase trailing behind. No press, no posts, no entourage. Just him, alone. And Jungkook, noticeably absent from his side. Fans noticed. Industry analysts noticed. The silence, they said, was louder than any press conference. The question burned, why did Jimin leave Jungkook behind? For weeks, speculation swirled, theories formed like wildfire across platforms, and emotional analysis of each frame of that airport footage flooded social media. But behind that moment, behind the quiet separation of two of the most beloved members of BTS, was a story far heavier than any of them had ever told, and one that, until now, had not been spoken by anyone within HYB. Sources with direct knowledge of the situation have now confirmed that Si Hyuk, the enigmatic founder of HYB, was not only aware of the incident, but had a pivotal role in orchestrating what many are now calling a strategic separation. Not a rift, not a feud, but something colder, sharper. An intentional fracture designed to elevate Jimin into a solitary artistic chapter, one where the shadows he walks through are not metaphorical, but real. Those close to the situation have described the moment at Gimpo not as the end of a friendship or the erosion of camaraderie, but as the beginning of a test, one Bang himself initiated. A challenge designed not for the group, but for Jimin alone. This wasn't abandonment, one insider told us. It was an unspoken decision, one that had been building for months, if not years. Bang believed Jimin needed isolation to unlock something deeper inside him, something he couldn't reach with the group still close. And the trigger? A project so monumental that Si Hyuk reportedly suspended all other executive commitments to oversee it personally. According to studio insiders, this was not about launching a solo album. This was about confronting Jimin with the parts of himself he had suppressed during his years in BTS. The vulnerability, the pain, the weight of perfection, the expectation of always being the emotional one, yet never fully allowed to break. When Jimin boarded that flight to Los Angeles, he wasn't heading toward luxury or fanfare. He was flying into isolation, into the most demanding recording process of his life. Sources say that Si Hyuk had already assembled an elite, confidential team in Santa Monica.
No cameras, no interviews,
no outside access, and most shockingly, no Jungkook. Some fans had expected Jungkook to join Jimin overseas, as had happened with past collaborations. The Golden Magne had often been Jimin's closest companion in both studio and life. But this time it was different. Bang reportedly made the decision clear. Jimin must do this alone. Not for artistic effect, but because emotional solitude was the core of the project's DNA. Bang believed that the real Jimin, the raw, cracked, imperfect Jimin, had never been fully heard, said a senior HYB production member. He needed to break him down, strip him of all support, and in doing so, let him rebuild himself not as part of a group, but as a singular voice of modern music. This decision, harsh, emotionally brutal, and calculated, was not made without consequence. Fans immediately noticed Jimin's changed demeanor. He looked hollow, one fan commented after spotting him in Los Angeles. Like he'd left more behind at that airport than just a bandmate. Another wrote, "Where is Jungkook? Why isn't he with him? They always fly together." But perhaps the more unsettling question was never asked out loud. Was Jimin even meant to come back the same person? In LA, under the veil of extreme confidentiality, the sessions began. Bang Si Hyuk was present at every step. He didn't just observe, he controlled. Lyrical content, production aesthetics, vocal delivery, even lighting during nighttime sessions. Insiders describe an atmosphere that felt less like music making and more like a clinical emotional exorcism. One producer described the process as watching a man dismantle himself note by note. But perhaps the most jarring development is what insiders now confirm. Bang Si Hyuk instructed Jimin to cut off communication with certain members during production, including Jungkook. IT was, reportedly, the only way to prevent emotional contamination. Jungkook is Jimin's emotional anchor, one insider shared. Bang wanted to sever that connection temporarily.
Not permanently.
But long enough to see what Jimin sounded like when he wasn't trying to protect anyone. And the results? Fractured, haunting, almost unrecognizable. The project, codenamed Zero Frame, is said to be a sonic departure from anything HYB has ever released. The lyrics, many written in English but spliced with raw Korean verse, describe themes of absence, betrayal, solitude, and desperation. One unreleased track, tentatively titled A Letter I Couldn't Send, reportedly brought even veteran producers to tears. The emotional toll on Jimin has been described as severe. Sleepless nights, voice cracks, panic attacks. But Bang never left. He was there, late into the night, watching, waiting, guiding. But what of Jungkook? Multiple sources have now confirmed that Jungkook was at the airport that day. Not by chance, but by choice. He came to say goodbye. He stood outside the restricted area, reportedly waiting for Jimin to look back. He never did. Whether this was a scripted moment or a spontaneous heartbreak remains unknown. But what's clear is this. Jungkook left alone, and Jimin walked forward into a world where he could not be followed. The emotional rupture between the two, while not rooted in hostility, is real. And it is sanctioned. Some at HYB refer to it as necessary discomfort. But others whisper in private, they didn't deserve this. Meanwhile, Bang Si Hyuk has gone dark. He has turned down every public engagement, including an invitation to speak at the Kin Music Forum. He has not updated his social media, not appeared in any company briefings, and, according to insiders, sleeps less than 4 hours a night. He is consumed by the project and by what he believes it could mean, not just for Jimin, but for the future of global pop music. This is not just a solo album, said one American music executive who was brought into a private listening session. It's a blueprint for emotional realignment. It's painful. It's vulnerable. It's too raw for radio, but it will change the landscape if he survives it. And survival now seems to be the core question. Studio reports describe Jimin as thinner, quieter, more deliberate. He arrives early,
Leaves last.
speaks little,
Writes more.
and in the few moments he is shared with those around him, his words are measured. One producer recalls Jimin whispering, "This isn't for the charts. This is so I can breathe again." Perhaps the most haunting account came from the night he recorded a single piano ballad, just him, one take, eyes closed. At the song's climax, he broke down, but Bang didn't stop him. He simply said, "Keep going." And he did. The final mix still contains the sobs.
No edits.
No polish. And it is that decision, to let the imperfection stand, that some now believe may define the future of HYB itself. A future not built on perfection, but on reality. And in that reality, Jimin walks alone. Today S for Jungkook. There has been no statement, no interview, no social media post. His silence is thunderous. Fans have begged for a message, a word, a sign. But perhaps that, too, is part of the plan. The enforced silence, the orchestrated space between them. And in that silence, Bang Si Hyuk remains, watching, listening, and waiting, because this isn't over. And when Jimin returns, if he returns, he will not be the same. Neither will Jungkook. Neither will we. What truly happened at the airport may never be fully explained. But the consequences are already unfolding, and the world is watching. Breath held, heartbreaking, eyes open. The visual of Jimin walking alone through the terminal, hood drawn, gaze lowered, utterly detached from the presence or expectation of companionship, continues to reverberate across public discourse. Yet as the emotional waves settle and the frenzy of speculation cools into more calculated scrutiny, a more sobering question emerges. Are we witnessing a documented fracture within one of the world's most influential musical relationships? Or are we merely complicit in the consumption of a highly engineered media narrative? This, now, is the axis upon which the entire story turns. And it is not a question to be taken lightly. We must consider the origin of this narrative. A convergence of video clips on TikTok, anonymous posts on Twitter, speculative YouTube commentary, and fragments of purported insider testimony disseminated across unverified channels. Not one statement, not one visual confirmation has yet emerged from an official source, neither from HYB Corporation, Bang Si Hyuk, Jimin, nor Jungkook. All that exists is a puzzle of emotionally charged impressions, strung together by inference and magnified through collective emotion. What, then, is real? Can we accept at face value that Bang Si Hyuk, a corporate executive known for his strategic precision, would risk the emotional integrity of one of his most valuable artists for the sake of an emotional isolation experiment? Is it plausible, beyond dramatic speculation, that a veteran producer would intentionally separate Jimin from Jungkook, not out of necessity, but for narrative tension? Or are we, as consumers of this information, allowing ourselves to be manipulated by sensationalism masked as truth? These are not rhetorical inquiries. These are fundamental questions demanding accountability from both media distributors and audiences alike. Has the public's emotional investment in BTS, its mythology, its interpersonal dynamics, its every gesture and silence, rendered fans vulnerable to believing any narrative that fits a certain emotional arc? Are we no longer able to distinguish fact from fabrication when it is wrapped in familiarity and staged through aesthetic precision? Indeed, one must confront the uncomfortable possibility that this entire sequence, Jimin's isolation, Jungkook's absence, Bang Si Hyuk's shadowy presence, is not documentation, but fabrication. A scenario constructed, either intentionally or organically, to generate virality, elevate emotional stakes, and anchor attention in an oversaturated media environment. If that is the case, then what is the cost? We must ask, to what extent has the media manipulated audience perception by framing unverified fragments as a cohesive truth? And why, despite the lack of official confirmation, are millions convinced of its authenticity? Is it because we want to believe it? Is it possible that we, as a digital society, are addicted to emotional narratives so much that we accept them without interrogation, without skepticism, without evidence? Consider this. None of the alleged testimonies from producers, studio staff, or HYB insiders are publicly attributed. Every quote remains anonymous. Every claim is traced back to unverified sources, often posted with disclaimers, yet rapidly consumed as irrefutable fact. How can truth survive in an environment that rewards speed and emotional impact over authenticity? Moreover, what does it say about our collective reasoning when the silence of Jungkook is interpreted not as privacy, but as proof? Or when Jimin's lowered head in a photograph is not taken as exhaustion or contemplation, but as validation of a broader dramatic arc? This raises a further ethical question. Have we begun to exploit the emotional lives of artists for our own entertainment? It is critical, indeed essential, that audiences begin to reflect on their own complicity in constructing narratives around incomplete data. When we accept ambiguity as proof, we risk reducing complex human lives into consumable storylines designed not for truth, but for engagement. At this juncture, it is imperative to reflect critically. Ask yourself, what evidence do you possess that confirms the authenticity of this incident? Who benefits from the propagation of the story? Is there any verifiable documentation connecting Bang Si Hyuk directly to the events as described? Would HYB, a corporation built on meticulous control, allow an emotional fracture between its top artists to be so visible and unguarded? And most crucially, are you responding to the truth or to the emotional narrative constructed for you? To be clear, this is not to diminish the possibility that parts of this story may, in fact, hold elements of truth. But we must resist the impulse to treat potentiality as confirmation. There is a difference between plausibility and fact, between storytelling and journalism, between emotional resonance and verified reality. The deeper danger is not that this story is entirely false, but that we have become unable or unwilling to discern where truth ends and fiction begins. Let us be unflinching in our questions. If this is true, why has no official body acknowledged it? If it is a strategic decision by HYB, what ethical considerations are being overlooked in subjecting Jimin to such isolation? And if it is fabricated, wholly or in part, who orchestrated it and for what purpose? We urge readers to reflect on these questions with the seriousness they warrant. The entertainment industry, particularly in the digital age, thrives on parasocial intimacy. But intimacy must not replace inquiry. Familiarity must not replace skepticism. In this time of algorithmic influence and content monetization, every viewer and reader must become a gatekeeper of truth. Blind belief is no longer innocence, it is complicity. Emotional stories are not inherently false, but they are not inherently true either. We are not here to confirm or deny the narrative. We are here to question it. As this story continues to spread, we invite you, yes you, to engage not just as a fan, but as an observer, as a citizen of a media environment that demands your discernment. You must ask more. You must question deeply. You must resist the comfort of a complete story when all you have is fragments. In conclusion, let us remind ourselves, truth is not always what resonates. Sometimes it is what endures under scrutiny. Will this story endure? That is not for us to decide. That is for you to ask, and to keep asking. The question remains, is this the truth we are witnessing, or the narrative we have been led to believe?